Welcome to the lecture series. This is the first video on machine learning and software development best practices. We are going to start by learning how to use a Git repo to do software version control, and we're going to use the bare Git repo. If you want to learn more about Git, you can watch more detailed videos on YouTube. This video will be specific to a bare Git repo. I'll probably do a short video later on how you can use Git and GitHub, but since it's primarily a machine learning course, I'm just going to do the basics of using Git to do software version control, and then we go from there. So let's begin. First of all, you go to search for setting up a local Git repo. This comes up from the Git website, setting up the server, and then we'll follow most of the steps. Sometimes I'll look at the document, sometimes I won't, but with this document you can follow most of the steps. So we will create a user, enter a password. Now I already have a user created, so we'll go to the next step, which will log into the user workspace, and the user is Git. So right now, if you look at it, you'll see that the workspace we are in is called dash, and the dash is the one just before the @ symbol, right? After base you have a dash, and then there's an @ symbol. And so now if we log into Git, you will see that dash change to Git. So let's see what happens. So now we are in the Git workspace, and you can see it's Git @ dash. We want to set up SSH, so we are going to put public and private keys in the .ssh folder, which has already been created. This step right here we're not going to use. We will create the file name while we are creating the SSH key. Here is the command to create SSH key. You put it in .ssh folder, so it will be .ssh, and then the key is called authorized keys. And then just hit enter for the next steps. One was already created, so we overwrite that and just hit enter for the next steps. If we cd into the .ssh folder, we should see authorized keys, and we're going to look at the private authorized keys. And the reason we're going to look at the private authorized keys is because when we want to set up SSH login, the private authorized key is what's going to be updated, as I will explain later. Now we are creating the server for the Git repo, and we are creating it in this Git workspace. So we just use a folder for the server, and the folder starts with srv, and then we create a project.git folder, and within the project.git folder we will create our bare Git repo, which is done by git init -- bare, and you hit enter. And if we look in this folder, we should see the contents of the bare Git repo, and this content is what we're going to be cloning wherever we want to use this bare Git repo to do software version control with. So we are back into a different workspace, which was the dash workspace again, and now we are going to create project folders for our software, and we will do so by cloning the bare Git repo, which we start by checking the contents of the folder. There's nothing in there. We go back to home folder and then go to .ssh to make sure that we can use SSH for login. Right now we have a public key and private key, and these keys now correspond to the dash workspace. the previous keys we just created corresponded to the Git workspace. So we got to look at the contents of the public key of the dash workspace. And why are we looking at the public key? Because the public key of this dash workspace is going to be put in the private key file of the Git workspace, because we are going to log in to the Git workspace from the dash workspace. I'll explain more about that in a little bit. So now we are copying the contents of the public key of the dash workspace into the private key of the Git workspace. And the way we do that is with the command shown. We enter the password of the Git workspace, and then from now on we won't need to enter password anymore. As we can test right here, we can use SSH to log in into the Git workspace from the dash workspace without needing a password. And right there, the login just happened. If you look all the way to the bottom left, you'll see now we're now in the Git workspace and not the dash workspace. And you can see the project of the bare Git repo that we created in the Git workspace. So we can log out now from this, go back into the dash workspace and start to do our cloning. Here is the path to the server, to the folder that contains our bare Git repo that will be doing all our software version control repository. So we just logged out from the Git workspace. We're now in the dash workspace, and where our software development is going to happen. We'll do software development within machine learn folder, and we need to clone the bare Git repo in this folder. And we do that by getting the username at the host computer and then getting the path to the server. So we do git clone, and then we get the user, and the user in this case is git, and the user is at dash HP laptop 15BS2XX, right? And then now we need the server path or the repo path, and you hit enter, and the clone just happened. Let's verify that we did the cloning. And to do that, we look at the content of our machine learn folder now. It has a project in it. If you see it into a project, you now see a .git, and the contents of .git would look like those of the bare Git repo. So this confirms that the cloning has happened. Now let's test Git software control by creating a simple file called readme.txt. We put anything in the file, and then we're going to use some git commands to push this file onto the server. We stage the file, and then we commit the file. Anytime you want to do a commit, you need to add a message that says what changes you made. Now we push to the repo, and then now we're going to confirm that the push did happen. And the way we're going to do this confirmation is to imagine you had another person that was also doing work on the same project as you, and both of you wanted to use this Git repo for software version control. And so now we're going to use a different folder as if it were that other person. And to do this, we would create a different folder, and then we'll clone that bare Git repo here as well. So we make dir the second folder. We'll call it m2learn, and we cd into m2learn, and then we do a cloning in there. So again, the person is still logging into the Git workspace, So we need the user and computer host name of the Git workspace, and then we need the path to the server repo, which is right there. You paste that, you hit enter, and now if we successfully cloned, you should see the contents of the readme.txt file that we had. So you do ls, the readme.txt file is there. You look at the content, it is testing local git server. So that worked out fine. So the next step is to explain how the SSH portion worked. To start with, we're going to look in the private key of the SSH file in the Git workspace, which is the workspace where our repo is at. And the private key is authorized keys. You look at it, you scroll all the way down, you will see that after the end open SSH private key, you now have additional content, and this is the content that came from the copy ID that we did before, right here. Right at the top you have an ssh-copy-id. This is how the content ended up in the authorized keys of the Git workspace, and in the authorized key file of the Git workspace. The next step is to see whether to confirm indeed that the content of this file is the same as indeed the public key of the dash workspace. We do a cd and go into its .ssh folder, and now look at the public key of the dash workspace. So as you can see, it's the same as what we saw in the authorized keys in the Git workspace. So to summarize, since we are doing our software development in the dash workspace and we have our Git server in the Git workspace, it means we want to log in to the Git workspace from our dash workspace. So to log into the Git workspace from our dash workspace, you have to put the public key of the dash workspace into the private key of the workspace that we are logging into, which is the Git workspace. I hope that's clear. And so that's what we just did. And right now everything is complete. We can do our version control, and we can use SSH to do the pulling and pushing, so we don't always have to use password anymore. So please click the thumbs up icon below and leave a comment so we can build an amazing machine learning forum. Have a great day, and see you at the next video. Bye.